Halito, everybody. Tlahayim, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us today for this informational session about the new PhD program in Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies at the University of Oregon. My name is Brian Klopotic. I'm the department head for IRES, and I'll be starting us off today with an acknowledgement that we are located in Kalapuya territory, or as we often say around here, Kalapuya Ilahi, using the Shinnecock term for territory or land. So like other tribes in the Willamette River Valley, the Kalapuya, and specifically the Chippewa Band of Kalapuya, were forcibly removed by the United States to the Coast Reservation following treaties in 1851 and 1855. And today, Kalapuya people are primarily enrolled in the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indian Reservation. They also continue to maintain connections to this place, and we continue to try to support those connections as best we can. And they continue to make important contributions here in Oregon, at the University of Oregon, and around the world. So in following that Indigenous protocol of acknowledging the original people of the land, we also extend our respect to the 9 federally recognized tribes of the state of Oregon, and we express our respect to the many more tribes who have ancestral connections to this territory, as well as to other displaced Indigenous peoples who call Oregon home. So I'll tell you a little background about our department. We started off as a loose collection of classes in folklore back in the 1970s, when a lot of this stuff was kicking off, and it was just kind of a couple of classes in African-American literature, something in the folklore department. But we've really obviously grown a lot since then. We started having a program director in the 90s. We became departmentalized in 2008, and we've been expanding our faculty. We are currently called the Department of Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies. That was a name change that happened recently. And in preparation for launching this graduate program that we're offering now. We are a comparative or a relational program. So we think a lot about coalitional anti-racism, about how we're connected to one another, how we have mutual fights against white supremacy and so on. And we think about how our lives are riven through with these other vectors of power and difference, such as gender and sexuality and immigrant status and so on. So that's a little bit about our department, how we came to be, and how we came to offer this graduate program. So this is the very first year that we're accepting applications for a PhD program. So I want to give you a sense of what we're going to do today as we begin. So we're going to start with introductions. So each of the faculty members who are on this call are going to introduce themselves. We'll talk about our broad research interests and give you a sense of who we are. Then our Director of Graduate Studies, Professor Lynn Fujiwara, will serve as our MC today. She'll also share some slides that'll talk about our PhD program structure, requirements, application questions, tuition and funding questions, and whatever else comes up. And after that, we'll have some time for questions, and we'll try to wrap up within the hour. So I'll start off the introductions. As I said, my name's Brian Klopotic. And I'm an associate professor and department head, and my research interests actually are pretty broad, but one theme that I keep returning to is the ways that indigeneity and race intersect one another and cleave together or cleave apart at different times. So in my first book, that meant a lot of attention to the ways that Indianness is constructed, not just in relation to whiteness, but also in relation to Blackness. So that happens in not only in daily life, but also in policy considerations like federal recognition policy, like education segregation, like redlining, right, voting rights, things like that. So in my current project, I'm also working on those similar kinds of consideration. I started working with the Choctaw Apache tribe in Louisiana, and my family is Choctaw from that same area of Louisiana, from Sabine Parish. And we started talking about what their federal recognition application might look like. And as a community with Spanish as a heritage language, they're often and with indigenous heritage on both sides of the US-Mexico border, they're often in this position of having their identity constructed in relation not just to whiteness, but also to Mexicanness. And so I started working on these cross-border discussions of how are race and indigeneity constructed in Mexico in comparison with the United States. So I have other interests. I teach classes in Native environmentalism, Black Indian relations, Indian Latinx relations, intro to Native studies, things like that. And that's just a real quick look into what kind of work I'm doing. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Lynn Fujiwara, our Director of Graduate Studies. So please take it away, Lynn.
Hello, everybody. It's great to meet you. I am Professor Lynn Fujiwara. I have been at the University of Oregon for 20 years now, and my area of focus is in Asian American studies, women of color feminisms. My earlier work, which I still am engaged in, it focuses on immigration and welfare policy. It resulted in the book Mothers Without Citizenship. My current work is still in the same vein, looking at cultural constructions as text to analyze Asian American feminist resistance, but really merging with queer theories of normativity and how those constructions of resistance challenge normativity through racialized and gendered structures. I am really excited to be the graduate director right now. We have been working really hard in developing this PhD program. We're all very excited and we can't wait to start with our new cohort in the fall. I have been fielding a lot of questions for the last year now. And so we thought it would be really great to have this session and, just sort of put some of the information out there that folks have been asking, and I know that people who are here today may also have questions. So with that, I will ask Ernesto Martinez to introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Ernesto Martinez. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been teaching at the University of Oregon since 2006. I'm an associate professor fully in this department. And I am a literary critic and cultural theorist by training, but I'm also a children's book author and a filmmaker. And so my areas are, broadly speaking, in comparative ethnic studies, primarily African American and Latinx studies. I'm also invested in women of color feminisms profoundly and queer theory. I want to say that in my career, I've been particularly invested in theories of resistance, and I'm particularly interested in having conversations with students who might benefit from thinking really profoundly about forms of violence that don't just affect our bodies, but affect our minds. And I have been writing and continue to teach on questions of epistemic violence, so violence that affects us in our capacity as knowers and as community members worthy of being known. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there and I'll pass it on to Charisse Cheney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charisse Cheney. I'm an associate professor in the department. I have been here since 2009, so almost 11 years, I guess. It's my 11th year. My particular focus is on Black studies, and the work that I tend to do focuses on Black nationalism and critiques and problematizes Black nationalism, particularly using gender and sexuality. So the first book that I wrote was about masculinist politics of the golden age of rap nationalism. Artists like Ice Cube who are coming back into the news today. And then the book I'm currently working on is about the resistance, Black resistance to Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. And then the next project that I'm working on looks at the ways in which white and Black Americans objectify Africa and Africans in an effort to kind of animate their own racial and gender subjectivities. So I would say that my broad research and teaching interests are particularly in Black feminisms, Black sexualities, Black nationalism, popular culture, and political cultures. So having said that, I will pass it along to Laura Polito.
Hello. Hi. My name is Laura Pulido, and I've only been here like 4 years, I think, here at the U of O. And I am a professor in both Indigenous race and ethnic studies and in geography. And most of my work has been around the subjects of environmental justice, critical human geography. I do a lot of social movements. I do a lot of work around both comparative and relational ethnic studies, as well as focusing on Latinx studies with a particular focus on the Chicanx population. Two of the current projects I'm working on is I'm doing a big project looking at national landmarks and how they represent or don't white supremacy and settler colonization across the United States, and especially here in Oregon. And more recently, I started a project looking at the wildfire rumors. There were these big wildfires here in Oregon you might have heard about in September, and some of the rural communities were very concerned. They spread rumors that the fires were being set by Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And I was very interested in these white nationalist kinds of movements and their connection to the larger racial formation. So those are some of the things that I'm working on. Thanks. And now I'll turn it over to Sharon.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope everyone is safe and okay. My name is Sharon Luke. I have been at UO since 2014, and broadly speaking, my research interests are engaged with dynamics of racial capitalism, as well as community efforts to survive it. And when I look at the latter, it has to do with social movements, but also, everyday struggles that we might not consider political or meaningful. So my book was about, for instance, letter writing in the context of these global efforts that organize apartheid landscapes, specifically in California. So I'm interested in that. I also do a lot of work in the history of modern thought in general, and how it relates and has stakes in how we think about race and inhabit racialized bodies in real life. And I have kind of a ongoing interest in just dynamics of race, space, culture, and power, specifically focused on the American West, and also focused specifically in various modes of incarceration. So I teach in a lot of areas. I've taught everything from Intro to African American Studies and Literature to Asian American Studies and Literature, Race and Incarceration. I'm teaching a class now on Japanese internment. I'm also teaching the theoretical foundations, Black Marxism, on and on, so it's kind of broad. We're really excited to be opening our program and to meet you. So I'm gonna toss it now to Courtney Cox.
Hi everyone, my name is Courtney Cox. I am an assistant professor here in IRES, and broadly I look at issues of identity, representation, globalization, labor, technology, all of these good things as they intermingle together with power within the world of sport and sports media. And so really what I'm interested in is untangling the things that we watch for pleasure, or the ways that people try to separate these things and say, this is the thing that should not be political, or this is the thing that has to be political. And I really am interested in the discourses that surround sport. And so I teach courses such as race, gender, and sport. I teach a course in the Olympics. I also teach courses that are thinking about labor and globalization in other areas such as wine, and thinking about post-coloniality through wine. And so I'm really interested, very excited to have all of you that are here with us today and interested in this program, because I think it's a really dynamic time and a really important moment for ethnic studies and for this department specifically for this program. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will toss it over, who is left, to Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer O'Neill. I'm an assistant professor also in Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies and also affiliated faculty with the History Department. And I'm also a member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, which is one of the 9 federally recognized tribes here in the state of Oregon. And so I focus specifically on Native American studies, but also history, American West history, and a lot of focus on American West history and international Indigenous history and activism. So specifically for a lot of the work that I do is very interdisciplinary. So my research and teaching examine more of the social, political, and historical intersections of both Native American, United States, and international relations history, particularly focused more on 20th century to the present with really a focus on sovereignty, self-determination, questions of nationhood and cultural heritage and global Indigenous rights. And I really focus on this across a variety of different types of fields, mediums, and forms. And more broadly, my work is really dedicated to centering Indigenous traditional knowledge, applying decolonizing methodologies and Indigenous research methods, and within teaching, really implementing place-based education. So the courses that I focus on and teach are Indigenous Introduction to Native Studies, as well as focus on Indigenous peoples of Oregon, as well as creating a new course around Indigenous research methods and ethics. So the appropriate protocols and methods that you should use when working with tribal communities. I also will be developing a course on international Indigenous activism. So that's really focused on the research that I really have a lot of focus on, and which is one of my larger projects, which is examining international Indigenous activism in the late 1970s, and specifically focused on different organizations that worked both with here in the US, but also cross-border with Canada and South America, and how those groups work together to focus on international Indigenous issues. And I also have a strong focus on the women within that movement as well, and the stories and their activism as well. So I look forward to working with you and answering any questions that you might have.
Thank you everyone so much. I am going to go ahead and launch into the structure of the program and all of that. So I'm going to share my screen, which is going to take me 1 second. And I'm going to kind of go through this. These are sort of broad strokes. Some of this information is available on our website, but please take note of any questions. Feel free to use the chat and ask your questions, and we can field them when I'm done with this 15 or 20 minutes of sort of talking about our program. How is that? Thumbs up? Okay. So again, you met some of our core faculty. We also have a large body of graduate faculty connected with the PhD program. They are from all across campus: theater arts, cinema studies, political science, sociology, history, anthropology, the College of Education, the Communications and Journalism School, the School of Music, am I forgetting anybody? The Planning 3PM, Planning and Public Policy Department. So we have folks from all across the university working with us and who can also mentor and guide graduate students in our program. Of course, this sort of spans lots of large areas of study. These are sort of the broad strokes. Of course, We all specialize in particular topics and issues, but to give you a sense of the breadth of what we cover, we really do cover a lot of various fields, and we are interdisciplinary, and we draw from folks who are doing ethnic studies aligned work in our department. So I'm going to jump right in. Years 1 and 2 are pretty much filled with coursework. We have designed a program where we really center and focus on mentorship. So by the end of the first year, you select a what we would probably call a primary advisor. And at the end of every year, we do an annual student review. And we do this so that you have a chance to tell us how things are going for you, and we have a good chance to see how things are going from you on our end, so that we can see if there are areas where we can provide more support. By the middle of the second year is a pretty clear indication whether you should continue on to the PhD track. So if something comes up, or for some reason you will not be continuing on to the qualifying exams, we do have a terminal master's program, but we don't admit people for a master's degree. So by the end of the second year, you are in a position to where you are figuring out your qualifying exam committee and getting your qualifying exams sort of organized in terms of what you think you're going to be doing. And I will talk more about what those qualifying exams are in a minute. But I want to just show you some of the courses that are required during your first 2 years. So these are the required core courses. You have a year of colloquium, which is really focusing on professional development, teaching and pedagogy and mentorship, a theoretical foundations course, an interdisciplinary methodologies, and a genealogies of ethnic studies. So you will be taking these in your first 2 years. We also have required substantive courses, and these courses vary. These are sort of what we call topics courses. And depending on the faculty member who's teaching it, it will sort of be oriented toward their focus and their specialty. So there's a course called Race, Space, and Power, ES 620, Cultural Production, ES 621, Resistance and Dissent, ES 622, and Race and Sexuality, ES 623. And in fact, I'm teaching ES 623 in the winter, and I'm calling it Feminist Theories of Intersectionality, which is going to really look at the relationship of intersectional theories and queer studies. Okay, so you will also need to take, in addition to those courses, 25 credits of elective courses. They can be other substantive courses that are taught by a different faculty member than who taught it before, or a different topic. We have a list of commonly taught 500 and 600 level graduate courses, so please see our website. There's a link to commonly taught courses. We have at this university what are 400, 500 courses, which are designed for advanced undergraduates and graduate students, and 600 level courses are graduate student only. All of our courses must be passed with a B or better. And as I said before, if you are unable to continue through to the qualifying exams, then you may earn a terminal master's degree, which is basically turning a term paper that you wrote for one of your core, substantive, or elective courses into a much larger paper to be able to earn the master's degree. Let's see, yeah, and just a reminder, we don't have a master's program though. We are only admitting students who want to come and get a PhD. So years 3, 4, and 5 consist primarily of qualifying exams and the dissertation. So really the fall, hopefully, you know, through the first and second year, you are actually engaging in work that helps situate you in the qualifying exams. So while you are taking these courses, you should be thinking about, what do I want to focus on? What field do I want to focus on? So one model is to complete the subfield and the specialized field in the fall, or you could spread them out. But all parts of the exam, including the prospectus, need to be done by the end of your 3rd year of the program. And I will go into a little bit more detail about what that looks like in a second. 4th year is really focusing on your dissertation research, depending on what kind of project you are doing. You will be taking dissertation credits for that. By the end of your 4th year, we really want to see a chapter, it could be a draft, that you would present at the graduate colloquium. Right? So it gives you a chance to also work on presenting your work and talking about your work to an audience. The 5th year, of course, is really focusing on your dissertation until completion in the spring, and then you have your PhD. Okay, so a little bit more about the qualifying exams. Exam 1 is considered a subfield, approximately 25 to 30 pages, where you discuss the trajectory, core debates, and directions of the field, depending on what you are focusing on. Exam 2 is a comprehensive syllabus, and we find this to be a really important exercise, as for graduate students who want to take on academic teaching jobs, it's really important to think about what goes into the thinking around a syllabus. So we're also asking you to provide a 15-page analysis of your syllabus. So you design the course based upon your area of interest. Usually it'll be a little bit more specified than your subfield. And then you would analyze your chosen texts, probably the thinking process of how you made your decisions and what you didn't include that were hard to give up, and how your course will fulfill the learning objectives. Exam 3 is a prospectus draft of the dissertation. So we really designed this program. We went through many, many, many layers of revision in conversation with the graduate school, with graduate council, about making this process as streamlined as possible to get you onto your dissertation. So once all 3 of your exams are completed at the end of your 3rd year, then you are fully ready to move into the dissertation research. So you're supposed to defend your dissertation prospectus by the end of your 3rd year. You will continue to take dissertation credits and conduct research and write presentation. Excuse me 1 second. Thank you. Through the 4th and 5th year, you are really focusing in on writing. All committee members must have a draft of the dissertation at least 3 weeks prior to the defense. We would appreciate it a lot sooner, but that's sort of like the cutoff. If you can't get it to them by 3 weeks, then the defense isn't going to be able to happen. The defense is held by the end of the 5th year. And then when you successfully defend your dissertation, you will have your PhD. Okay, so some common questions have been around admissions. The applications are due on December 15th, and the applications are to be submitted on the GradWeb platform, which is available on our website. And one of the most common questions I've been getting is, what makes a strong application? What are you looking for? So together we created some collective ideas, and you know, if there's time in the Q&A and you still want more clarification, please ask. Having a really clear idea of what field of study or research area you wish to pursue is very important. It sort of drives, what is propelling you to invest and devote your time to getting a PhD in IRES. How your work is invested in the project of ethnic studies, and how your goals are in alignment with the field. So it's really important that you understand what ethnic studies and what IRES is about, the kind of work we do. We really appreciate impact scholarship that impacts the field. you need to show how prepared you are to pursue a PhD in IRES. What have you done thus far to prepare you for this adventure? Let's see, what distinguishes you or highlights you, either through your academic preparation or other activities that you can share as a candidate? What makes you stand out? A very strong writing sample. Your best written work is also a high priority in terms of thinking about the kinds of things that we're looking for. Your writing could also show real potential. You know, it's not like we expect you to enter as somebody who is ready to write a book, but to show that you have the potential to write a dissertation project. Another really frequent question that I have been getting is about tuition and funding. Of course, we're all concerned about how we're going to fund and survive a PhD program. So we offer 5 years of funding that comes in the form of graduate employee appointments. GE appointments provide a monthly salary, a full-time tuition waiver, mandatory fee subsidies, health insurance premium coverage, and subsidized health insurance premium coverage for dependents. Please submit a GE application when you apply through GradWeb if you are knowing that you are going to want financial support. There's another GE application available in the GradWeb, but you have to upload it in another section. So please make sure to do that. GE appointments can be teaching, research, or administrative assistantships. We are also able to utilize some of those GE appointments for writing times or research times where you may not have specified duties as a teaching, research, or administrative assistant. The salary is established by the university. And it is structured as a step program. So the more experience you gain, your salary will increase as well. And if you enter, if you're somebody who maybe has a master's degree already and you've already TA'd at your institution, you might be entering at a different step. So it's hard to give people a definitive salary amount, but the salary ranges are available on the graduate school website, and we have a link. And if we don't have it there now, we will have a link that shows you the exact salary range for the step and the appointment. We also have quite a few university fellowships and scholarships that graduate students can apply to and departments can nominate. So there's a long list of fellowships and awards. Of course, there's always outside funding and there is financial aid, all right? Probably the next most common question is this an in-residence program? And barring pandemic remote teaching, we plan to be an in-residence program with in-person courses. Once we go back to the usual routines of the university and if hopefully life resumes, not only will our courses be in person, but courses that you might be GEing for will also be in person. So we are going to be in person. The graduate school has off-campus housing resources to help students search for housing. Housing is not included in the offer or financial package, though. The university has off-campus housing designed for graduate students and students with families. We can also provide the link of the housing options in our own webpage. Because I know the graduate school webpage can be a little hard to navigate sometimes. The university has 3 connected childcare centers, one specifically that prioritizes students. And if you haven't been to Eugene, it is a beautiful area with lush trees, walking and hiking trails, biking, running. And when we aren't social distancing, there is a fun downtown with lots of craft beers and restaurants. And Eugene is very green and eco-conscious. Let's see. So, your questions. We hope to notify applicants in early 2021. The admissions committee is going to work really hard and really fast to try to get notifications out soon. Part of that reason is there is a scholarship at our university for incoming students, and we want to be in on the first round, and that deadline is February. So we're pushing to try to meet that deadline. But now, if you have other questions that I maybe didn't cover through this very quick and broad stroke coverage of our program, and also if faculty have other things that they want to add that I had left out, please do. So we are very excited about our PhD program, and it's been a long time in the making. It took years to get it approved, and we're really excited to be launching. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then we will field questions as a faculty body. About opportunities to support for student conference, travel, and presentations. And we have actually been talking about creating a graduate student development fund, utilizing budgetary income that we have towards that end. I don't know, somebody want to add to that? I know that's still in discussion phase.
We'll absolutely have some kind of funding for grad students to be able to travel to conferences. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but we recognize that actually presenting at conferences is a critical part of your professional development, and it's how you start making connections and start understanding the field in a way that wouldn't be available just by reading books, but by actually going and listening to what other people are working on. Laura, did you want to?
Yes, I would also add that the graduate school has opportunities also for students to apply up to several $100s every year for that.
So are we reading these? Is everybody reading the questions?
I'll speak to this first question about oceanic populations. Yeah, we absolutely recognize Pacific Island indigeneity, and we're actually developing an undergraduate major right now in Native American and Indigenous Studies, which the idea behind that is that we would be able to incorporate Pacific Islander indigeneity within that rubric, as well as Latinx indigeneities. And to think about how those kind of speak to each other. I mean, it's a global sense, but these are the areas of focus. So we're working right now to, we're pushing the university to give us another Pacific Islander line. There's no promises on that right now. It's something that's on our mind, absolutely, and it's an important part of how we envision Indigenous studies. And I know that just through conversations with people in Asian American studies, they feel absolutely the same way about that important distinction, within or for Pacific Islander populations in particular.
Yeah, just double that. We don't merge Pacific Islanders and Asian Americans into a category here in IRES.
And someone asks, says, I have an interest and demonstrated expertise in working with Indigenous communities who seek to blend Native and Western science for their children's learning while implementing on-the-ground environmental and natural resource work within tribal lands. Is it possible to blend the IRES PhD program with environmental science or other science-heavy programs? So there are courses that you saw the classes that you're required to take for this program. So You would have to start with the understanding that that's the core, and with the understanding that you also can move from there in other directions. So there, I think it was 20 credits, which is 5 classes that you can choose from among, whatever, works with your advisor to complete the PhD program, or the classwork anyway. So I'll say that we have a very strong group of people working on Native environmentalism and environmental justice in general. So I teach an undergraduate class on natives and environmentalism, and we also have Kari Norgard on our graduate committee, or graduate faculty. She's a graduate faculty in our department, but she's in sociology and more closely aligned with environmental studies. So we have a strong environmental studies connection, and that is absolutely a research interest that you could pursue within our vision of the field, as long as it's also with that understanding of what our core is too.
I can answer this question about the GE form asks what positions one is interested in. Are there courses to be taught in IRES? Yes. You will actually, when you apply, we will be considering your application for IRES undergraduate classes to GE. So IRES does have GEs to teach in IRES. I hope that answers that question.
So
Okay.
one of the questions, just to circle back, there's a question here about if it's is there a possibility to defer admissions if folks are accepted for 1 year?
That is tricky. I think we would have to check on that. I'm thinking, Laura, right? Because the way the deans have set this up is that we are going to admit 5 students every other year. So our program is really designed, our curriculum will be designed around that pattern. So not really sure about that. We have to check on it.
Yeah, I would think not.
Okay.
But we could check, yeah.
There's a question here. It says, I'm currently in a doctoral program specializing in Indigenous studies. How many credits can potentially be transferred?
I think that will depend on the courses. It will depend on the courses and their, alignment with our program and the admissions committee assessment of the courses that were taken. And I think that goes for any graduate courses taken in any kind of graduate program. It really depends. We can't sort of give a blanket number.
Great.
On that question though, I remember, I'll look, if I find the information, I'll put it in the chat, because I seem to recall that when we wrote the proposal, we had a maximum number of credits that could possibly transfer, did we not? I'll look for it. And if I find it, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, there's a question here that says, in terms of letters of rec, is there more emphasis / preferences for professors versus a supervisor? Is 3 letters the maximum limit?
I think you want letters from people who can best express your level of preparation, what makes you an ideal student for the PhD program in IRES. So like if you have a letter from a professor that doesn't know you very well, but you could also get a letter from a supervisor who knows your work very closely, I would probably say you should get the letter from the person who knows you the best and knows your work the best, who can speak to your strengths. But it is also important for us to see the level of preparedness for this academic program. So it really depends on what kind of supervisor, what kind of work you were doing, how it can speak to your level of being prepared for the program. This is a question for our office manager as to whether or not more than 3 letters can arrive. I believe they can. So I think you can request more than 3 letters. I'm going to say I think you can.
I'm not sure on that, but I can definitely check and let you know in a minute.
Thank you.
The question that was asked when we were dropped for a moment was, can I apply if I'm receiving my bachelor's in spring 2021?
Yes. Absolutely. You just have to have your bachelor's and then you can apply. I mean, well, you can apply now in anticipation of completing the bachelor's. Visha Souza asks, says, my focus is cultural historical trauma for Kanaka Mali. Can students do interdisciplinary studies with, say, psychology professors? Yes, yes, you can. Again, keeping the core in mind, as long as you feel like the core is a good fit for you, then understand that you can also work with other faculty while you're here. And that's really the goal of having our expanded graduate faculty, is to say, take advantage of anybody that's doing aligned work that's going to help you produce the best scholarship that you can possibly produce. So you would want to look at, who is here that does cultural psychology. You might, I'm not sure if, you might look into, see if Gordon Hall is in psychology, might be someone to work with, and you might reach out and see what direction he might point you in as well.
To add to the question about can I work with somebody, say in psychology, you actually do need an outside member. So when you are forming your dissertation committee, you need 3 faculty members, and they will be from the graduate faculty body, but then you need an outside member. So somebody who's not part of the graduate faculty. So that might be, thinking about where you might find that outside person who's connected with your work, who you would want to work with.
Kyle asks, you have a political science master's degree and have studied race and colonialism in various disciplines, but not ES specifically, because they didn't have such a department or discipline, and that's absolutely fine. Many of us came from different undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees, so we recognize we are interdisciplinary, and we recognize that there's value in all kinds of training that you can bring to bear on these important questions that we share.
Circling back to the question about how many references can be submitted, from what I can see in the system, it looks like it accepts up to 3. But once you, pardon me, once you get into the application form, once you get into that platform, if it does allow you to send another one, you can, but I'm saying that from everything that I can see right now, it seems to just be 3.
Thank you, Donella. I wanted to add something. I'm just kind of thinking about, those of you who are listening in today, maybe thinking about a grad school for the first time, or don't have necessarily the kind of people in your life that are have familiarity with it, that can give you some kind of advice. So a general question that has come up a little bit in different ways is this question of fit. And for graduate school, that's the most important thing, is fit. Grad school is not like a college. It's a very small program. It's 5 people, and it should be a place that you feel that you're gonna grow the most from. So we, of course, we invite you to consider our program, and we hope that we can be a fit for you. But it's also really like it's for you to figure that out as well. So you also have to love writing and research. That's really what an academic career is. If you're getting a PhD, you really have to, that is what a PhD is. You're writing a dissertation. And so I hope you'll have that idea in mind as well. And another thing that maybe isn't as clear is, I'll tell you that when I applied the first time to grad school, I didn't know what grad schools were expecting either. So we talked a little bit about that earlier, like what kind of things are we looking for? But grad schools in general, grad programs in general, are looking for some kind of indication of a vision of what you want to do for research, what kind of research goals you have. So do your best to convey that to us. What is the research that you want to accomplish in this program, and why is this program the place that is going to help you accomplish those goals? So I'll just share that little bit, and maybe if other people have anything they'd like to share on something they wish they knew before they were applying to grad school, they might share that as well.
I would maybe just add that so many of us in this department have also transformed over time. And so I think what I want to just say is that training in something as diverse as Indigenous race and ethnic studies, I say diverse actually not just in topics, but in terms of methodologies, can mean very different things, but training, just like athletic training, is a certain kind of specified work. And so we'll be providing you with a community of people to guide you in that, right? You're gonna identify a research area and we'll guide you with thinking about methods. And it might seem rigorous and specific at the time. And then, but that's also to build a foundation for you, right? To transform that practice as you move forward. And so it's just, it's building off of what Brian just said, so that you can also think of us as collaborators who want you to develop the best practice for the communities that you belong to, for the work that you want to do. But we also don't just provide any kind of training. We also provide very specific forms of training. And so the sooner that you're familiar with our research profiles, and the kind of work that we do, the better you might be able to articulate a fit, right? How you fit here versus any another department.
Can I just add one more thing to that? As someone who applied to graduate school 3 different times, dropped out of one program, left one program with the terminal masters, and then finally crossed that finish line. I think that one thing that stands out to me that I learned in my many rounds of applications is that over time I moved from a place of applying based on the notion of what do they want from me and how can I communicate that, to coming from a place of really anchoring myself and trusting myself and approaching applications as what do I want out of graduate school. And that really helps not only articulate fit, but it kind of helps shape the way that you talk about your research and what matters to you. And that kind of grounding really communicates to the committee, wow, okay, this person is ready. So if you want to, you shift from thinking what do people want from me to thinking about what do I want out of studying and out of life, I think that helped me a lot.
I'll also add to that and just saying I'm also coming at this work also as a first-gen graduate student, as well as someone who came in it from a more non-traditional space of often, starting and stopping a program, as well as working full-time as well while I was completing my program, which can be challenging, which I don't highly recommend, but that we also want to support you in ways, because I was doing that through activism work. And we also know that many of you are very passionate about the work that you do, and we want you to bring that passion with you. And that is also what helps you to stand out, and that you are coming with unique qualities and work that you've done that we really want to engage with and celebrate here. So whatever background you're coming from, whether you've started or stopped a program, or you're coming from a bachelor's or whatever, there is no right or wrong way to come into a PhD program. There are, of course, like we said, certain things that we're looking for, but we also want you to know that everyone is welcome here, and that we want to have a variety of different backgrounds and perspectives of different routes that people have come from. And I say that, of course, mainly because that's one of the ways I came to my program, and where I would always think that, oh, this is not how everybody came to their program, but for me, it was my pathway, and everybody's journey is different, and that's okay. So we're very excited to see what you bring to the program in that way.
I just want to answer that one question that came recently about, are the professors here who are on this in this information session available to be advisors? And the answer is yes. We are all very excited about the program, and we are looking forward to advising and mentoring and working with students.